haven't told these stories. Oh my God. So I remember, like, I was in the business before Dustin ever was in the business, right? I love it when people tell me that I got my career on the back of my ex-husband. No, he wasn't even in the business when I was in the business. So, no disrespect to him, but just speaking facts. Anyway, we had a pay-per-view out in Phoenix, and I can't tell you the previous relationship to this right now. One day, ask me about this, and I'll give you the scoop. How's that?
Sure.
Okay,
Down the road.
but there was a relationship that still to this day is deep in my heart. And anyway,
A
so
WCW guy, could you say that, or is it someone from another company?
many companies,
Okay.
but just still deep in my heart, love, 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 and respect. Okay. Anyway, one day we'll talk about it. So anyway, we had a pay-per-view out in Phoenix, WCW pay-per-view. And I remember I was on, it was a Phoenix Hilton, and they had this beautiful like mountain like sunset behind the hotel. And Janie Engel, Dusty, myself, and I forget who else was sitting there on the patio with this beautiful backdrop, but we were sitting there having drinks at the outdoor like bar. And um it was getting close to sunset, and all of a sudden Dustin pulled up in a cab, and literally, like, he got out of the cab, and it was like like all this fairy dust fell down, and I was like, what the hell? Because I have looked at this kid like a jackass because he pulled into town not too long ago, and he was like a hot mess. And why am I even thinking anything about this kid? Right. And so anyway, he comes to the patio, has a drink. We all go and have dinner. We're in like this big, like, um, uh, van that's like a million seater. Like, it's like a hokey van, right? And we go to dinner, and then when we come back to the hotel, um, Dustin said to me, he's like, all right, I'm gonna go and hang with the boys. And I'm like, dude, you're not going anywhere, you're gonna hang with me. And so he hung with me at the hotel. Don't ask me why I spoke to him like that. Like, what the hell? Um, anyway, it was the first time I ever had tequila in my entire life. The last time I had tequila in my entire life. Um, I remember him getting me up to my room because I was like not well. You know, that one shot of tequila was like, woo. And he, God bless him, he didn't do anything. He literally tucked me into bed and went to his room. The next morning, I could not find my toothbrush and toothpaste. I called him. I'm like, dude, do you have toothbrush and toothpaste? He brought it to me, and we flew home from Phoenix, and he sent up this letter, this little tiny note that said, will you go out on a date with me? And I sent back, yes, but you have to call me. Like, I don't know why I was being such a bitch, but like, what? His letter wasn't good enough to invite me for, sorry, for like a lunch? No, I said to him, like, you have to call me. So the next day he calls me, and we went out to lunch, and then he said, you know, would you go out to dinner with me tonight? And I said, yes. We went to dinner the next day, lunch, dinner, and then he just moved into my apartment. Yeah, so we were just never apart after that. So yeah, that's how that happened.
When you were working with him against the Ultimate Warrior, how was the Ultimate Warrior in those days?
Kind of pissy. I love Dana. I love her girls, and I know she has gone through a lot, just experiencing everything she did. But yeah, he was not real thrilled with what we were doing. Dana said to me that I think she was on one of my podcasts, and she said, no, like he loved you and whatever. But I just got the connotation that he was not real thrilled with what he was doing with us. I think that the whole Goldust thing was so new, and the whole gay innuendo was so new. He was just not certain of that.
I see. What did you think of the whole Goldust and Marlena situation? Because it was much different than Alexandra York.
Yeah, yeah. So Vince came up with the whole Goldust thing, right? I had nothing to do with that, and Vince called, and interestingly enough, Devin, I just found a briefcase of mine. If I go down this rabbit hole and forget where I started, keep me on the path that you just asked me, please. Um, so at one of my mom's homes, I just found one of my briefcases, and I found all these letters and notes and this and that. And there were some from Linda and Vince, on letterhead, on stationery, and um, there was one from Jim Ross telling Dustin how great he was going to be as Goldust. And what's the most heartwarming is I found letters from Pops um, to Dustin, and this is during the time that he and Dustin weren't speaking, um, like apologizing to Dustin, Grandma apologizing to Dustin. Oh gosh, yeah, I remember when it all happened because Dustin had been fired from WCW literally for listening to his agent, right? Mike Graham telling him to, juice to freaking Blade
Yeah.
and
In that
gig.
truck match, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you especially because they were not in the studio, they were way out in the freaking middle of nowhere. And you knew to do whatever your agent told you to do. Like that's what you did. And so both guys did the same thing, and they fired both guys. And I remember it just being so devastating to us because we had a baby. And God, this is so sad to tell you. I remember going to Kroger in Atlanta and writing a check for our food and knowing we did not have money to cover it, and calling my mom saying, can you please help us? Like that's how bad it was, right? And then it was not too long after that that Vince gave him this idea. And to Dustin's credit, like he went from being a tobacco chewing Texan, right? Ass kicking Texan, to being this dude that is totally androgynous and totally like piss you off, make you mad, make you glad, like just something no one had ever seen before. Adrian Adonis back in the day, but Dustin took it farther, right? I was laying in our tanning bed at home, and all of a sudden it hit me. Dakota's like a year and a half. I've been like not doing wrestling for like almost 2 years. And it was like all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, what does the WWE not have? Actually, WWF at the time. Sorry. What do they not have? And at the time they had Sherry, Scary Sherry, and Sunny. And so you know how they were very different human beings in terms of their characters, right? So I was like, there's no old school Hollywood, and Dustin's supposed to be this like perfect actor and whatever. Like, he quotes all these movies and whatever. So all of a sudden it just hit me in the tanning bed. I was like, oh my God, like they need this female in the company. Like that's what they need. And so I called Dustin while I was in the tanning bed, and I told him all like my entire idea. And he's like, I love it. And I said, okay, call Vince and just like tell him. And he's like, I'm not calling Vince, you call Vince. And at the time, Dustin was very scared of authority. And I hope that he's at the point in his life now that he can admit that back in the day. But he was like, no, you call Vince. I'm not calling Vince. And so I did, I called the office, and I remember getting a phone call back from Pat Patterson, and Pat gave me the obligatory, oh, that's great. That's a great idea. Thank you so much, but we're not interested. But thanks anyway. So I literally cast it aside, didn't think another thing of it, focused on being a mommy. And I was at my grandparents' house, and it was right at Christmas time. And Dustin said, he called, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm at Gran and Granny's. And he said, well, pack your bags. They want to do your idea. And I was like, you're kidding. So like everything about Marlena was me. I had the idea to go to the ring with either a cigar or a glass of wine. And at the time, because cigars were allowed, at least in, not that people could walk in and smoke cigars in the seats, but for us, we could walk out, and whatever we used for our characters was allowed. And we decided to go with the cigars. And yeah, because back in the day, I absolutely love bubble baths and cigars. So it was, to me, it was like, let me do this extension of myself with this character. And the reason I came up with and decided on Marlena was because of Marlena Dietrich, who was way back in the day in Hollywood. And she was one of the first women that wore pants and wore pantsuits and smoked cigars. And I was like, dude, you are all that in me. I love you. I cherish you. Yeah, let's go with Marlena. Anyway, so yeah, and that's how Marlena was created.
Now, I've heard you already tell the story about Dustin on the plane ride from hell, but the story I wanted to know about the plane ride from hell is, were you paying attention to the Brock Lesnar, Mr. Perfect altercation that happened on there?
Yes and no. Yes and no. It was kind of like everyone that was, and understand this was a chartered flight, so there was really no first class. There, we were all one, right? But I was sitting in first class, and as was Vince, as was a lot of the office. And when a lot of this stuff went down, Paul Heyman, one of the best things he ever did for me, he looked at, well, this is when Dustin was singing that damn David Allan Coe song to me, which he had sang to me like before we married, during our marriage, whatever.
Yeah.
And now he's married to another girl, which I loved. I thought she was wonderful. She was a great stepmom to Dakota. And this jerk is singing me this damn song. And I remember like looking back, because I knew where it was coming from. All the trouble was in the back of the plane, right? And when I glanced back, I caught Paul's eye, and he was like, "Kayfabe, come, like K fucking fabe." And so I just laid my head against the window again and went back to sleep. And yeah. So
I'm glad you made it through that without too much
crazy,
craziness.
crazy.
So were you, I guess that means you were apart from Dustin by the time he went back to WCW.
Yes, yes. And it pisses me off. Um, Dustin had gone through rehab several times, and like at my behest, because I was like, choose drugs or your family, right? And I remember when he went to rehab, it's like he's with Terrell, he's married to now. They were dating, and I remember he came to my house, and he was shaking me, and, um, he for the first time ever, he told me like what he had been taking and drinking and doing. And I was just shocked because I was this stupid wife that didn't realize what all he was doing. So I remember, and I'm down a rabbit hole already. So bring me back in a minute to what the question you asked. Anyway, I remember, telling Dakota like what he was doing, that he was going to rehab, and she's like, "No, I don't want to see him. He's just going to get out and do the same thing." And he didn't. And I said to her, I'm like, Pumpkin, if you do not go and see your father before he goes into rehab, you will never forgive yourself if something bad happens to him. Like, give him all your support and everything. Like, don't do this, right? Anyway, she talked to him. She was there. She was present, and never gone back. He's never gone back. And I have to say about him in the future, but I'm proud of him that he's remained healthy, and like he's the healthiest he's been. And his new addiction, I've said this for many years now, is the gym. Like, that's his addiction, is the gym. And what a great addiction to have, right?
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.